At the age of 34, I have what most people would consider a prosperous life. My name is Emma. At Westbrook Industries, where I work as the finance director, I make enough money that I haven't had to check my bank account before making a purchase in years. I own 2 apartments, my first suburban home, which I purchased when I began earning a fair living, and a lovely apartment in the city center, where I presently reside. Anyone who knows me would likely say that my life is stable, and they would be correct aside from my younger sister Lily, who is a constant thorn in my otherwise peaceful existence. Lily has always been the family's wild kid. She was discovered sneaking out to parties when I was studying finance and doing unpaid internships. She contacted me from the police station when I received my first promotion, having received a citation for skinny dipping at the beach with her pals. Lily decided to try her hand at being an influencer after I completed a big deal at work last year. She spent all of our parents' credit card money on camera gear that now sits in their garage collecting dust. Since discovering my ex-boyfriend having an affair with his co-worker, I haven't been in a committed relationship for 3 years. I've been concentrating on my job ever since that betrayal left its impact. In contrast, Lily has spent years with Jake, her college love. In 2 weeks, they will finally tie the knot, and the wedding planning has taken up all of their time. Other than when she needs money for an absurd item, I haven't seen her very much lately. I was at the office reviewing quarterly reports when my phone buzzed with a text from Lily. Family dinner tonight at Mom and Dad's. Be there by 7. Important wedding stuff to discuss. I sighed, knowing exactly what important wedding stuff meant. It was code for Emma needs to pay for something expensive. I'd already given her $25,000 for the wedding money that was supposed to cover everything, but somehow there was always something else. Last month it was a vintage car to drive away from the ceremony. Before that, a champagne fountain that required special insurance. I'll be there, I texted back, already preparing my refusal speech. The wedding was only 2 weeks away. What else could they possibly need? When I arrived at my parents' colonial-style home that evening, I immediately sensed something was off. Mom, Dad, Lily, and Jake were in the living room, huddled together and talking in hushed tones. They went silent the moment I walked in. "Hey, everyone," I said, hanging my coat in the hallway closet. Dad nodded in my direction, while Lily and Jake exchanged a glance that made my stomach tighten. I know my sister better than anyone, and that look meant trouble. "So, what's this important wedding stuff?" I asked, taking a seat across from them. "Let's discuss it over dinner," Mom said, ushering everyone to the dining room. Dinner was strangely tense. Dad talked about his golf game, while Mom kept refilling wine glasses. Lily and Jake barely touched their food, still giving each other those knowing looks. Finally, as Mom brought out dessert, Lily cleared her throat. "Emma, we need to have a serious conversation." I braced myself. "Let me guess, you want to release doves at the ceremony, or maybe hire a skywriter?" "No, nothing like that," Lily said, looking uncharacteristically serious. "This is about your wedding gift to us." I raised an eyebrow. "My wedding gift? I thought the $25,000 I already gave you was my gift." "Well," Lily said, looking at Jake, then our parents, before turning back to me. "We've all been talking, and we think there's something specific you should give us." I waited, fork suspended midair. "Your apartment," she said finally. "The one in the suburbs where Jake and I have been living." I nearly choked on my wine. "Excuse me?" "We love that place," Jake chimed in, as if that explained everything. "We've been living there for 3 years now, and it feels like home." "It's the perfect wedding gift," Lily added. "We've already planned the renovations and picked out new furniture." For a moment, I thought they were joking, but the serious expressions on their faces told me otherwise. They actually expected me to give them my apartment worth hundreds of thousands of dollars as a wedding present. "You can't be serious," I said, putting my glass down. "I already gave you $25,000 for this wedding, not to mention you've been living in my apartment rent-free for 3 years. I don't even make you pay utilities." Lily's face flushed with anger. "We thought you'd be happy to help us start our married life by giving away my property. Property that I worked incredibly hard for." I could feel my blood pressure rising. "Do you have any idea how many hours I put in to afford those apartments? How many years I spent paying off those mortgages?" "Emma," Mom cut in, her voice sharp. "Don't be so greedy. You're successful. You have another apartment. Your sister is getting married. This would be a wonderful gesture." I looked at her in disbelief. "Greedy? I've been supporting Lily for years. I paid for her car repairs, her last vacation, and now a lavish wedding. How am I the greedy one here? How dare you? Lily shouted, jumping to her feet. Her face was red with anger. You think you're so perfect with your fancy job and your 2 apartments. I stared at her, stunned by the sudden outburst. You're selfish, Emma. All you think about is yourself, she continued, practically spitting the words. Look at you 34, almost 35, alone and getting older by the minute. No husband, no kids, nothing. In a few years, no one will even look at you as a woman anymore. Her words hit me like a physical blow. I glanced at my parents, expecting them to intervene, to tell Lily she'd gone too far. Instead, they sat there nodding. Your sister has a point, Emma, Mom said softly. Lily has found love. She's building a life with Jake. You should help her. After all, it's not like you have a personal life to invest in. The room started spinning. My own family people who were supposed to love me unconditionally were attacking me for not giving away my property. Worse, they were using my single status as a weapon against me. I can't believe what I'm hearing, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I've worked my ass off for everything I have. Lily has been living in my apartment for free for 3 years, and I've given her $25,000 for this wedding. And this is how you thank me? By demanding more and insulting me? I grabbed my purse and stood up. I'm not giving you my apartment. Not now, not ever. Emma, sit down. Dad ordered, but I was already heading for the door. You'll regret this. Lily called after me. You're going to end up alone with nothing but your money and your precious apartments. I slammed the door behind me and practically ran to my car. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely get the key in the ignition. Once inside, I let out a sob I'd been holding back. How could they do this to me? How could they treat me like I was nothing more than an ATM with an apartment to hand over? I drove aimlessly for a while, too upset to go straight home. Finally, I pulled into a coffee shop parking lot and went inside. I needed to calm down before I could face the drive home. 1 large black coffee, please. I told the barista, my body still unsteady. As I sat in a corner booth, my phone began buzzing incessantly calls from Mom, Dad, and Lily. I silenced it and put it face down on the table. The messages started coming in immediately after. Mom, Emma, please come back and discuss this rationally. Dad, your behavior was unacceptable. Call us immediately. Then Lily's messages, each worse than the last. You've always been jealous of me. Your biological clock is ticking. Tick-tock. No wonder you're still single. Who'd want to be with someone so cold and selfish? You look older than 34. Those wrinkles aren't going away. I turned off my phone completely. The cruelty of it all was overwhelming. These were people who were supposed to love me, support me. Instead, they were treating me like an obstacle to their plans that involved taking what was mine. As I sipped my coffee, I made a decision. Tomorrow, after work, I would go to my suburban apartment and tell Lily and Jake they needed to move out. I'd been more than generous letting them live there rent-free, and this was how they repaid me. No more. They had 2 weeks until their wedding, plenty of time to find a new place. The next day at work, I could hardly focus. I kept replaying the dinner conversation in my head, each time feeling a fresh wave of anger and hurt. By the time 5 p.m. rolled around, I was ready to confront my sister. I drove to the suburban apartment, rehearsing what I would say. I wouldn't yell. I wouldn't cry. I would simply inform them that they had 30 days to vacate the premises, a generosity considering I could legally give them less time. When I arrived, I noticed Jake's car wasn't in the parking lot. Good, it would be easier to talk to Lily alone. I walked up to the door and knocked firmly. No answer. I knocked again, louder this time. Still nothing. I could hear movement inside. Someone was definitely home. Lily, open up. I know you're in there, I called, ringing the doorbell repeatedly. After several minutes of this, I tried my key. It didn't work. Confused, I tried again, jiggling it in the lock. That's when it hit me they'd changed the locks on my apartment. The audacity was breathtaking. I pulled out my phone and called Lily, my hands shaking with rage. What do you want? She answered, her voice cold. Why the hell are the locks changed on my apartment? I demanded. There was a pause, then Lily actually laughed. It's not your apartment anymore, Emma. It's ours now.
Have you lost your mind? I asked, my voice rising. That apartment is in my name. Paid for it. I own it. Not for long, she said smugly. And don't bother threatening to call the police or sue me. We both know you'd never take your own sister to court. Lily, goodbye, Emma. The line went dead. I stood there, staring at my phone in disbelief. My first instinct was to call my parents. Surely they would talk some sense into Lily. But then I remembered their faces last night, nodding along as Lily insulted me. They wouldn't help. They'd never taken my side over Lily's, and they weren't about to start now. Back at my apartment, I poured myself a large glass of wine and sank onto my couch. My mind raced with possible solutions. I could call a lawyer. I could call the police. But would I really want to see my sister arrested? Despite everything, the thought made me uncomfortable. As I contemplated my options, my phone dinged with a notification. Lily had posted something new on social media. Against my better judgment, I opened the app to see what she'd shared. My stomach dropped as I read her post. With heavy hearts, Jake and I, along with my parents, have decided not to invite my sister Emma to our wedding in 2 weeks. Someone who doesn't behave like family doesn't deserve to be present on our special day. We look forward to celebrating with all our other loved ones. The post already had dozens of comments from relatives and family friends, most expressing confusion or asking what happened. Lily wasn't responding to any of them, leaving everyone to speculate. Almost immediately, my phone started ringing with calls from aunts, uncles, and cousins, all wanting to know what was going on. I ignored them all. What could I possibly say? That my sister demanded I give her my apartment as a wedding gift, and when I refused, my entire family turned against me. I turned off my phone and finished my wine, then I poured another glass. The situation seemed surreal. How had things escalated so quickly? 24 hours ago, I was just a woman going to a family dinner. Now, I was being publicly downed by my sister 2 weeks before her wedding. As the initial shock wore off, a plan started forming in my mind. Lily and my parents thought they had the upper hand, that they could bully and manipulate me into giving up my property. They were wrong. If they wanted to play hardball, I could play too. But I needed to wait for the right moment. The wedding was in 2 weeks. That would be my opportunity. Those 2 weeks dragged on interminably. At work, I threw myself into projects to stay distracted. At home, I avoided social media and kept my phone on silent. Occasionally, I'd check for messages from my parents or Lily, only to find more guilt trips and insults. None of them showed any remorse or understanding of how inappropriately they'd behaved. I contacted a locksmith I knew from when I'd locked myself out of my city apartment last year. "Jim, I need a special favor," I told him over the phone. "I need you to meet me at my other property on the 14th. The current occupants changed the locks without my permission." "No problem, Emma," he replied. "I can handle that for you." Next, I reserved a storage unit not far from the suburban apartment and paid for 3 months in advance. I also hired movers for the wedding day, giving them specific instructions on what to do. Finally, the wedding day arrived. I knew Lily, Jake, my parents, and most of our extended family would be at the ceremony and reception all day. The timing was perfect. I met Jim, the locksmith, at my apartment at 9 a.m., just as the wedding preparations would be underway across town. Within minutes, he had the door open. He installed a new lock and handed me the keys. "All set. They won't be getting back in without these." I thanked him and paid him generously, then stepped inside my apartment. Looking around, I was shocked by what I saw. Lily and Jake had redecorated without my knowledge or permission. New curtains hung in the living room, and walls that had been beige were now painted a bold blue. They'd even removed some of my furniture and replaced it with pieces I didn't recognize. The audacity struck me anew. They truly believed this place was already theirs. Taking a deep breath, I got to work. I found some large boxes in the storage closet and began packing up Lily and Jake's personal belongings: clothes, toiletries, books, electronics. Anything that clearly belonged to them went into the boxes. It took hours. By mid-afternoon, I'd filled over 20 boxes with their possessions. The movers arrived at 3 p.m., as scheduled. "Take all these boxes to this storage unit," I instructed, handing them the address and access code. "Stack them neatly so they're accessible." As the movers worked, I sat at the kitchen table and composed a text message to Lily. "Congratulations on your wedding day. I hope it's everything you dreamed it would be. Your wedding gift from me is in storage unit 247 at Westside Storage. The access code is 5529. All of your and Jake's belongings are there, packed safely. As for the apartment, I've changed the locks back. Since you're now married, I'm sure you understand it's time for you to find your own place to live. This is the only wedding gift you deserve from me. I didn't send the message yet. I would wait until the movers were done and I was back home. By 6 p.m., the apartment was empty of their belongings. I looked around at the changes they'd made: the painted walls, the new curtains, the rearranged furniture. It would take work to restore it to its original condition, but that was a problem for another day. I locked up with my new keys and drove home. Once there, I poured myself a glass of champagne, a small celebration of taking back control of my property and my life. At 8 p.m., when I knew the reception would be in full swing, I sent the text message to Lily. The response was almost immediate. My phone exploded with calls and texts from Lily, from Jake, from my parents, even from some relatives at the wedding. I didn't answer any of them. Lily, you ruined my wedding day. How could you do this? Mom, Emma, your sister is in tears. What have you done? Dad, this is unacceptable behavior. Call us immediately. Jake, you had no right to touch our things. The messages kept coming, growing increasingly desperate and angry. My parents threatened that they'd tell the entire family what a terrible person I was. Lily swore I'd regret this for the rest of my life. I turned off my phone, took my champagne to the bathtub, and enjoyed a long, peaceful soak. For the first time in weeks, I felt completely at peace with my decisions. The next day, I slept in late. When I finally turned my phone back on, there were dozens more messages, but I deleted them all without reading them. Instead, I opened my laptop and began composing a social media post of my own. I've been quiet about recent family events, but I feel it's time to share my side. 3 years ago, I allowed my sister and her fiancé to live rent-free in an apartment I own. Recently, they demanded I give them this apartment worth hundreds of thousands of dollars as a wedding gift. When I refused, they changed the locks, claimed the property as their own, and uninvited me from their wedding. Yesterday, I reclaimed my property and moved their belongings to a storage unit. I'm deeply saddened that my generosity was met with such entitlement, and that my parents supported this behavior. I wish them all well, but I've decided to step back from these relationships for my own well-being. I hesitated before hitting post, wondering if I was being too harsh or airing too much dirty laundry. But then I remembered Lily's public uninviting of me from her wedding and the cruel messages about my appearance and single status. I deserved to tell my side of the story. I hit post and closed my laptop. Within hours, my post had hundreds of comments. To my surprise, most were supportive. Your sister is delusional. Who demands an apartment as a gift? You let them live there rent-free for 3 years and they wanted more. My cousin Rachel commented, "Now I understand why you weren't at the wedding." For what it's worth, Lily was asking everyone for expensive gifts. She literally told me my planned gift wasn't good enough. I hadn't expected this outpouring of support. I'd been prepared for everyone to side with Lily, as they usually did. Instead, people were reaching out to tell me they understood my position and thought my sister was being unreasonable. Meanwhile, my parents and Lily continued their barrage of messages. The tone gradually shifted from angry to pleading. "Mom, Emma, please call us. We need to talk about this as a family. Dad, your mother is very upset. This isn't good for her blood pressure. Lily, you've made your point. Can we talk now?" I didn't respond to any of them. After years of being taken for granted, of having my generosity exploited, I needed time and space to process everything. A week after the wedding, I asked the building concierge to restrict access to my apartment. My family members are not to be allowed up under any circumstances, I instructed. 2 weeks after the wedding, I heard from my friend Tasha that Lily and Jake had cancelled their honeymoon trip to Bali. They're saying they need the... Why do you constantly appear so uninteresting, Wanna? To be honest, it makes me sad to think of you as my daughter. And what a difficult life it is to be 38 and yet unmarried. You are a problematic person. Melissa is more like me than you. She is so charming and gorgeous. You two were born to the same mother, which is hard to comprehend. Don't you think it's possible that you were switched at birth at the hospital? However, Dad used to say that I looked exactly like him. It's accurate. Back then, I should have chosen a partner more carefully. Marrying a man who looks so uninteresting results in a kid who is just as boring as you, regardless of how much money you make. Don't say that about Dad. Dad, in contrast to you, always treated Melissa and me fairly. Well, you and your unassuming father were very similar, weren't you? But regrettably, he is no longer present. Nobody is left to stand up for you. Growing up, I seldom recall my mother giving me compliments. My sister, who is 2 years my senior, is exceptionally clever and attractive. While ordinary and average me seemed to lack any appealing features in my mother's perspective, Melissa was her pride and delight. I'm Warner Price, a 38-year-old office worker without a partner. At the age of 28, my sister married her older co-worker after graduating from a prominent national institution and working for a respected corporation. Harrison Green, her spouse, is a well-recognized and promising outstanding employee in his area. It is a pleasure to meet Harrison Green. He is perfect, just like my sister, and everyone around them thinks they make the perfect pair. Because Harrison frequently travels for work, spending more than half the year away from home, we've barely had the chance to meet and haven't grown close. My sister gave birth to her first daughter at 33 and had a son at 37. After her maternity leave, she returned to work, balancing her job and childcare seamlessly. Beautiful and diligent both at work and at home, my sister is someone I deeply admire. That's why whenever my mother compares us, saying, "You'll never measure up to your sister," I have no choice but to accept it without protest. Still, being ranked by your own mother leaves an indelible scar on a child's heart. My father passed away 7 years ago due to illness, just after my sister had given birth to her first daughter. My sister said she was glad our father got to see his grandchild before he passed, as it brought him great joy. People often said I resembled my father as a child. Moreover, my father treated both my sister and me with equal love and care. Melissa was studious from an early age and always sat at her desk as soon as she came home. Studying is fun. When I learn new things, it feels like my mind is expanding. I remember her saying things like that often. On the other hand, I struggled with studying and couldn't seem to retain anything. The idea of my mind expanding made no sense to me. With more knowledge, it feels like the future is opening up. Thinking that way makes the future seem so bright. Though Melissa spoke passionately about it, I could see such a shining future. I never found studying enjoyable, nor did I have the passion for it that she did. Despite this, Melissa always devoted herself to studying at home and excelled in sports outside. She consistently won track and field competitions and served as the anchor in relay races, crossing the finish line first. Watching her, I felt words like gifted in both academics and athletics and beauty with brains were made for her. There's a saying that heaven does not bestow 2 gifts, but observing Melissa, it felt like she had been blessed with not just 2, but everything. So, I had resigned myself somewhere along the way, thinking it might be inevitable for my mother to adore my older sister. No matter how hard I tried, I could never measure up to her. My sister was someone I admired, but as people around us often compared us with remarks like "even though you're sisters," it gradually became awkward to be around her. Though our relationship wasn't hostile, we weren't especially close either. Her talent and achievements were so overwhelming that she seemed like someone from another dimension to me. As I grew older, I began to think that comparing us was pointless. Even so, my heart was repeatedly wounded by the blatant sarcasm my mother would throw my way. No matter how much you try to get used to criticism or comparisons, it's something you can never truly adapt to. "Mom, could you stop comparing me to Warner? We're different people." "You're right. My bad. But can you blame me? The difference is just so obvious. I can see why you would feel upset, Melissa." Sometimes, when my mother would make sarcastic remarks, my sister would step in to defend me. But even her words sounded to me like, "Stop comparing me to someone like her." When you have an exceptionally talented sister, no matter how much you try not to think about it, a sense of inferiority inevitably takes root in some corner of your heart. No matter where I went, people would say, "Your sister is so and so," constantly comparing us. It was only natural that this would happen. And my mother, as if enjoying these comparisons, would keep adding fuel to the fire. "Hannah really takes after your father, unlike you, Melissa." When my mother laughed while saying this, I felt an inexplicable discomfort. Being told I resembled my father made me happy. I loved my father dearly, but the tone in my mother's words carried a hint of disdain toward my father, and that was something I couldn't stand. In such moments, my father always came to my defense. "Hey, enough already. Both of them are our precious daughters. Melissa has her strengths, and so does Wanna. Han's strengths. I have no idea where those are, though," I said. "Stop it." Even though my father rarely raised his voice, these exchanges became a routine part of our household. After my father passed away, we decided to let go of the family home. The house was old, built by my father's grandfather, and was in disrepair. The windows wouldn't close properly, the second floor visibly slanted to the point where a ball would roll on its own, the floors creaked with every step, and it felt like it was only a matter of time before they gave way. Everyone agreed it was difficult to continue living there without major renovations, so we concluded it was better to sell the house and use the money to secure a new home. Though the house held many memories, my father had once jokingly said, "This house has reached its limit," so I believed he would have supported our decision. At the time, my sister and her husband were living in a rented apartment, but a plan emerged to use the proceeds from the house sale and their savings to build a two-family home for everyone to live in together. My sister offered me a choice, saying, "We can divide the money from the sale, and if you want to live alone, that's fine too." But my mother insisted strongly that we should build a two-family home. Under that pressure, both my sister's family and I ended up agreeing to her suggestion. Although I felt a desire to distance myself from my mother, I also felt uncertain about living alone for the first time. As I wavered, my brother-in-law reassured me, saying, "I travel a lot for work, so it would be a relief to have you around, Wanna." My sister added, "I plan to continue working too, so having you here would really help." Unsure whether their words were sincere or just polite, I still felt somewhat happy to think they needed me. Thus, I decided to move into the new house and live with them. On the other hand, my mother blatantly said things like, "Honestly, the house would feel more spacious without Wanna." Well, at best, she might be useful for babysitting. However, since my sister and her husband agreed to let me live with them, my mother didn't oppose the arrangement any further. Since my brother-in-law's parents had already passed away, no one objected to my sister's family living with us, so the plan moved forward smoothly. Now I live in the new house as a single woman. It seems my mother isn't too happy with this situation. "How long do you plan to keep relying on your family home?" She's asked me this question multiple times, but I managed to brush it off. My mother's sarcastic remarks are so routine that taking them seriously would be endless. Besides, my sister's children are absolutely adorable. My 7-year-old niece Sarah and 3-year-old nephew Sammy call me Aunt Wanna and are very attached to me. When my sister works late, I sometimes pick them up from daycare. Seeing their excited faces as they run toward me always warms my heart. This year, Sarah started elementary school, and while I miss seeing her sweet little face light up like that, I feel comforted knowing Sammy is still young, and I can enjoy these moments with him for a while longer. So, you're 38 this year. When do you plan on getting married? I don't have any plans at the moment. Do you really think you can get married with that face? Honestly, it's hopeless. Marriage isn't everything, and I'm holding down a steady job. Don't act so high and mighty just because you work at some third-rate company. I'm not acting high and mighty. I can't stand seeing someone as plain-looking as you hanging around. Honestly, I wish you'd just disappear. Do you really have to say all that? Sarah and Sammy are so adorable, taking after Melissa. But with you here, I worry your looks might somehow rub off on them. Even though my mother doesn't spend much time with her what is this situation? The kids also stared at me, puzzled. My sister's gaze felt like it pierced through me, making me feel even more wretched. See, isn't it better without Wanna around? She's nothing but a burden. A burden. She's already old enough, yet she can't get married, can't have kids, and works at a third-rate company. She's completely worthless. Just having her here is a waste of time and money. Hearing my mother's words, my sister turned her eyes toward me. Suddenly, my niece came over and started helping me pick up my clothes. Aunt Wanna, what are you doing? Sarah, you don't need to do that. Stop it. Pretty girls don't do things like that. Leave the garbage picking to the ugly ones. Despite the presence of my niece and nephew, I was on the verge of tears. Are you okay? I see, so that's how it is. My sister watched the scene unfold with a stern expression. Her silence made me wonder if she too saw me in this light. The thought made me feel even more miserable. I bit my lip in regret, thinking I should have left the house much earlier. Melissa, you feel the same way, don't you? I'm not needed in this family, am I? If people without productivity aren't needed, then I feel the same way. My sister said. Hearing her words, my mother reacted with delight. I struggled to hold back the tears that were threatening to spill. I felt that crying now would only make me feel even more pathetic. Exactly. Anyone wasting money should leave. Someone wasting money. Then why don't you leave, Mom? Even my mother was shocked, and for a moment, I couldn't understand what my sister had said. I thought I must have misheard her and found myself staring at my sister's face. She met my eyes and smiled warmly. It was clear she had meant exactly what she said. My mother looked bewildered, seemingly even more confused by my sister's words than I was. Mom, didn't you hear me? Wait a minute. What are you saying? It's supposed to be Wanna who leaves. My sister calmly set Sammy down from her arms, then she looked at Sarah and asked her to take Sammy to their room. Sarah nodded with a sweet smile. Come on, Sammy, let's go. She cheerfully took his hand and led him into the house. After watching them leave, my sister spoke. You said it yourself, Mom. People without productivity should leave. That describes you, doesn't it? Are you joking? I'm your mother. I gave birth to you. And what are you doing now? Wasting money just eating and sleeping. Where's the productivity in that? My sister's words left my mother wide-eyed with shock. She looked almost cartoonish, her eyes bulging as if they might pop out. You don't help take care of the kids, you don't assist with picking them up from daycare, and you don't do any housework. All of that has been done by Wanna. Without her, I would have been completely lost. Sis, that's just because she's a freeloader, isn't it? Mom, you're a freeloader too. Wanna pays her share of living expenses every month, but you use all your pension on yourself and don't contribute to utilities or groceries. I'm your parent. It's the children's responsibility to take care of their parents. And besides, the money to build this house came from selling your father's house. That gives me the right to live here. It's useless to argue that when we sold the family home, you claimed half as your inheritance. But this house was built entirely with the rest of the inheritance and my savings. Wana's rightful share was also used for this house, which gives her the right to live here. You, Mom, who didn't put in a single cent, don't have that right. What indeed? When the family home was sold, there had been a discussion about dividing the inheritance, but I had assumed the money was used to build the new house. At the time, my sister had offered to give me my share, but I chose not to take it, thinking it was better used for the house. It seemed natural to me, and I had assumed my mother thought the same. After all, she had been so adamant about building a two-family home. That's right. Dad's inheritance was divided, with half going to Mom and the rest split between Wanna and me. So half of it is mine. But, Mom, this house was built with the remaining inheritance and our savings. That includes the share Wanna should have received, so Wanna has every right to live here. You, who didn't contribute a single dollar, don't. What? Mom, you claimed the entire inheritance as your share and didn't contribute to building this house. That means you have no right to live here. So, shouldn't it be you who leaves? It seemed my sister's words finally sank in, as my mother's face gradually turned pale. She never imagined my sister would say something like this. My mother had always cherished my sister, firmly believing she would always take her side, no matter what. To be honest, I was just as surprised as my mother to hear my sister speak this way. But upon reflection, it felt very much like something my sister would do. Since childhood, she had always approached things objectively, without letting emotions cloud her judgment. Her expressions rarely betrayed her feelings, making her emotions difficult to read, but she always made logical decisions. I remember hearing about how, as a middle schooler, she witnessed bullying and used her reasoning skills to thoroughly defeat the bully in an argument. People around her sometimes described her as cold and calculating. Even so, I had always been proud of her. Seeing her unchanged after all these years, I felt a deep sense of admiration. What, are you planning to kick your own mother out? Have you forgotten everything I've done for you? Everything you've done. All you ever did was parade me around to show off. I was nothing more than a tool for your self-satisfaction. Hearing my sister's words, I realized she too had been harboring deep feelings about our mother. I used to envy how my sister always went out with our mother, but she had never seemed to enjoy herself. It wasn't that our mother adored her. To our mother, my sister was simply a trophy to flaunt. Even so, I've kept quiet because you're our mother. But Wana is also my beloved sister, and she's family. I believe family members should support each other. Hearing my sister's words warmed my heart, and I felt tears welling up. Knowing my sister thought of me this way filled me with joy. She truly was someone I could be proud of. Besides, Sarah is in elementary school now and understands more than you think. Having someone like you around would only have a negative impact on her, so you need to leave. What? Are you serious? Yes, I've reached my limit. It's not good for me or the baby to keep enduring this. Where am I supposed to go? My sister cast a single glance at my mother and walked past her without a word. My mother sank to the floor as I quietly tried to pass her. She suddenly grabbed my leg. Even you're abandoning me? Who do you think raised you to this point? You're not my parent. My only parent was Dad. With that, I walked into the house. My mother stared at our backs in stunned silence. Later, my mother tried to speak to my sister in a gentler tone, but my sister completely ignored her, acting as though she didn't even exist. Eventually, my sister told the kids, "Grandma is leaving." Yay, that's great. What? Well, Grandma was always mean to Wana. I didn't like her, Sarah said this cheerfully, laughing. Hearing her words, my mother seemed even more frozen in place. Children are incredibly perceptive, I thought, once again. Afterward, my mother began living alone in a small run-down apartment behind the train station. My sister quickly found an apartment and moved my mother's belongings out in no time. I was impressed by her swift and decisive actions. However, my sister is the one paying for the rent of that apartment. You would think my mother would at least be grateful for that, but she doesn't seem to feel any gratitude at all. Apparently, over the past 7 years, my mother had spent all the money from the sale of the house. I had felt something was off about her lavish lifestyle, wondering if my sister was giving her some financial support, but that wasn't the case. She probably thought she could spend her savings freely because my sister was covering her living expenses. She had racked up considerable credit card debt, so her monthly payments were quite significant. Most of her pension went toward paying off those debts, leaving her in a tough financial spot. She had asked my sister multiple times to let her move back, but my sister refused. She even called me, asking to borrow money, but I, of course, declined. Since then, I stopped communicating with her. I once saw my mum working part-time at a grocery store. She came up and demanded money when she saw me. I was strangely reassured to see her still lively. Her demanding demeanor apparently made her unpopular at her part-time work, and she led a peaceful existence in her flat without any friends paying her a visit. It was probably my final encounter with her. I got married and moved out 2 years later. The whole proceeds from the sale of our father's home were later given to me by my sister and her husband. My sister clarified that they had set aside